In life, there comes a moment when the world stops watching the goals and starts watching the mindset, when the spotlight fades and only your fire remains. You're not the rising star anymore. You're the standard. You're not here to prove. You're remind. Here to remind. Remind them who you are. What you've built. What you survived. This isn't the beginning. This is the final stretch. The last act. The ultimate test. The chapter where the real warriors rise and the pretenders fight. If you think greatness fades with age, you've never seen a legend sharpen under pressure. This isn't about retiring. This is about rewriting, reinventing, reigniting. Welcome to the final chapters. The part where the body slows, but the fire gets louder. Greatness is defined by how you finish, not just how you start. Greatness isn't earned at the beginning of the race. It isn't handed out after a few wins or early glory. It's carved into history when the lights dim, when the crowd gets quieter. When the years have tested your body and the world doubts your fuel is still burning. The true measure of a warrior isn't how high he rises at the beginning, but how long he stays at the top. How fiercely he fights when the world expects him to fall. Anyone can shine when they're fresh, when they're young, when the legs are fast and the praise is endless. But the question is, who still shines when fatigue sets in, when critics get louder, when the pace slows and the body screams for rest? That's when real greatness reveals itself. That's where legacy is written. Not in the opening act, but in the final moments of the performance. The beginning gives you attention, but the end gives you respect. Respect doesn't come from what you did fast. It comes from what you are willing to endure until the last whistle. Champions don't seek comfort in early success. They thrive in the grind that follows. They understand that a strong start is just an invitation, not a guarantee. You see, the world loves a fresh talent. They cheer loudest when you first arrive, when you explode onto the scene, when you're the new name. But eventually, the world moves on. Trends change. Faces change. Only those who adapt, who evolve, who remain obsessed with growth, only they last, and lasting is the real game. Lasting is where greatness hides. In the early stages, everything feels possible. The energy is natural, the motivation is automatic. But years later, when the trophies lose their shine, when you've already done it all, the decision to still push, to still give your everything, to still wake up hungry, that decision, again and again, that's where greatness is formed. Because greatness isn't just performance, it's persistence. It's not talent alone, it's the tireless choice to not settle. It's the will to improve when others will walk away. It's the mental edge that tells you, there's more to give, there's more to write. It's looking in the mirror and refusing to let your past define you, no matter how decorated it may be. When others are winding down, legends gear up. When others talk about what they did, true greats are too busy planning what they'll do next. It's this obsession with the finish line, with how they'll be remembered when it's all over, that separates the good from the great, the famous from the immortal. And so in those late moments, when the career is long, when the legs are tired, when the world expects the curtain to fall, that's when the best dig deeper. That's when they remind everyone, I didn't come this far to fade quietly. I came to finish the job. Final chapters are written with fire, not fear. When the final chapters begin, fear is the enemy. Not just fear of failure, but fear of slowing down, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough anymore. That fear creeps in silently, not in the first game, but in the 1,000th. Not in the first sprint, but in the last mile. But that's exactly why the fire must burn hotter than ever. The final chapters aren't about survival, they're about dominance. They're not written to preserve, they're written to prove. To prove that all the years behind you didn't just make you older. They made you wiser, stronger, more dangerous. The fire doesn't dim with age. It sharpens, it focuses, it burns with purpose. You don't light that fire by accident. You feed it every day. In silence, in the gym. In training. When no one's watching. When the headlines have moved on, when the cameras are on someone else. That's when the fire grows, because it isn't fueled by praise anymore. It's fueled by purpose, by legacy, by obsession. Fear whispers, you've done enough. But fire shouts, we're not done yet. Fear says you've slowed down. Fire says we've leveled up. And when that fire meets preparation, when it meets consistency, when it meets a mindset that refuses to fade, the final chapters become legendary. Because these chapters aren't for the doubters. They're for the believers. They're for the ones who understand that the last pages of a book are the most important. The ones that leave the deepest mark. the ones that define the whole story. You could have had glory early on, but if you don't finish strong, people remember the fate. That's why the final chapters matter more than the opening ones. That's why they must be written with heat, not hesitation. Fear makes you hesitate. Fire makes you act. Focuses on what could go wrong. Fire focuses on what must be done. And in these moments when your career is nearing its end, when time becomes your rival, fear is a luxury you cannot afford. There's only room for courage, for ambition, for grit. No one remembers the player who coasted through their final years. They remember the one who still fought, still sprinted, still wrote when others whispered. They remember the one who stayed obsessed, stayed relentless, stayed dangerous, even when they didn't have to be. It's in the final chapters that the true message is sent. I didn't just last. I dominated. Not because of age, not because of what I used to be, but because of who I still am. And that's the difference. Fear tells you to protect your legacy. Fire tells you to expand it. Fear says stop. Fire says, and when that fire burns in your soul, in your spirit, in your every move, the final chapters don't signal the end. They mark the beginning of forever. Champions never retire their hunger. True champions are not fueled by medals or applause. Their hunger isn't tied to seasons or stages. It's deeper than ambition, deeper than success. It's a fire that doesn't go out no matter how many trophies line the shelf. It's a constant voice inside saying, Emo. Even when the world says you've done enough, even when history has already remembered your name, that hunger stays. It stays because it's not about proving others wrong, it's about pushing the limits of your own potential. For champions, hunger is not situational, it's built into their DNA. It wakes them up before the sun. It pushes them through pain, through fatigue, through comfort zones. It doesn't care about past achievements, it doesn't slow down because you're older or because people now expect less. Hunger doesn't care about expectations, it only knows one direction, forward. There are players, and then there are champions. Players celebrate milestones. Champions keep moving after them. A milestone isn't a finish line for a real competitor, it's a checkpoint. An opportunity to ask what's next. A chance to reset the target even higher. It's not obsession with success, obsession with growth, with excellence. With becoming a better version of yourself every single day. That's why champions never get comfortable. They understand that comfort is the enemy of greatness. The minute you feel satisfied, someone younger, someone hungrier, someone less distracted is catching up. Champions never let that happen. They train like they're chasing, even when they're leading. They think like underdogs, even when they're at the top. It's not just about physical preparation, it's about mental discipline. It's about showing up when no one's watching. About repeating the basics 1,000 times, not because you have to, but because that's the standard. Champions don't wait for motivation. They don't rely on moods. They do their work every day because the hunger demands it. Even in the late years of a career, when critics start looking for signs of decline, a true champion leans into the grind. Not because they need to prove something to the world, but because it's who they are. It's not about the spotlight. It's about the standard they've set for themselves. Hunger is what makes them wake up after victory and go again. It's what makes them study their game, look for flaws, fix details that no one else even notices. Hunger is what makes them chase perfection in an imperfect game. Chim. And even when perfection can't be reached, they still reach higher than anyone else. People often think champions are chasing records, headlines, awards, but those are just results. The real drive, the real hunger, is about mastering their craft. It's about doing something better than it's ever been done before. It's about the daily war with themselves, with their own limits, their own doubts, their own fatigue. And that war never stops. That hunger never retires. It doesn't care if the body aches, if the schedule is tight, if the critics are louder than usual. It shows up anyway. Champions live with that hunger because they know it's what separates them. It's what made them. It's what keeps them alive in the arena when others fade. Silence and doubt fuel the inner drive. When the noise fades and the spotlight shifts to someone else, most people slow down. They need applause to move. They need headlines to feel important. But the real greats, they come alive in the silence. They don't shrink when the world gets quiet, they grow sharper, they focus deeper, because they know that when doubt fills the air, that's when true motivation is born. Doubt isn't something they run from. It's something they run from. It's something they use. Every headline that questions their ability, every fan who forgets their name, every analyst who says they're past it, that's fuel. That's energy. That's exactly what they need. Because silence and doubt reveal what's real. When the cheers are gone, when the hype is over, what's left is you and your will, your discipline, your mindset, your identity. That's why doubt is so powerful. It gives champions something to prove, not to others, but to themselves. It reminds them that nothing's given, that everything must be earned, again and again. Silence is not a sign of weakness, it's a test of how deep your motivation really runs. It's in those moments of silence that they made the biggest gains. In the early mornings, in the quiet jump, in the hours when the world is asleep and they're grinding alone. No music, no cameras, just pure focus. That's where the edge is built. That's where the gap between good and great becomes a canyon. When people doubt them, they don't argue. They don't respond on social media. They respond with effort, with discipline, with results. Because they understand that the best way to silence doubt is to dominate, to show, not tell, to perform, not explain. They use that doubt like oxygen, breathing it in and turning it into action. This is what makes silence so valuable. It removes distractions, it removes noise, it puts the pressure back where it belongs, inside. And that pressure, that internal engine, is far more powerful than anything the world can provide. It doesn't fade, it doesn't depend on trends, it's self-power. Champions don't fear being doubted, they fear being complacent. That's why they train like they're being hunted, even when no one is chasing them. That's why they still work like the kid who had nothing, even when they've achieved everything. Because they know the moment you start believing you arrived, the game will humble you. Fast, silence and doubt are part of the process. They're not obstacles, they're not threats. They are reminders that nothing lasts without effort, that past success means nothing today, that every day is a new opportunity to prove the fire still burns. And that drive, that inner unshakable, relentless drive, separates the champions from the crowd. This is what separates the champions. Excuses are not part of a winner's vocabulary. In the life of a true winner, there is no room for excuses. Excuses are the language of those who settle, of those who let circumstances define their limits. Winners, cut them out like dead weight. Because every time you choose an excuse, you delay greatness. Every time you justify a failure instead of owning it, you step further away from the top. Excuses are easy. That's why most people use them. But the top 1%, they reject ease. They choose responsibility. They choose to face the truth no matter how hard it hits. The mindset is simple. If I didn't win, it's on me, not the weather, not the referee, not the schedule, not my teammates, not my age. Me, that's the difference. That's the age is ruthless accountability. Because once you take full responsibility, you take full control. And when you're in control, you can grow, you can adjust, you can dominate. Winners don't look for reasons why something couldn't happen. They search for solutions to make it happen. They don't wait for perfect conditions, they build results in imperfect ones. They train in pain, they show up tired, they push when motivation is gone. Because they know this simple truth. You can have excuses or you can have results. You can't have both. Most people stop when it gets hard and say, I tried. Winners keep going until it's done. They understand that nobody cares about how hard it was, only about whether you finish the job. Excuses might win you sympathy, but results win you respect. Respect that comes not from what you say, but from what you do when no one's watching, when the pressure is high, when the odds are against you. When things go wrong, the average mind points fingers. The winner looks in the mirror. That mindset transforms every setback into fuel. Every obstacle becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes a step forward. Because the absence of excuses forces growth. It demands discipline. It demands mental strength. It forges resilience that can be shaken, even by defeat. Excuses are the enemy of consistency. And consistency is everything. One excuse today becomes two tomorrow. Before long, you're negotiating your effort, cutting corners, lying to yourself. Winners are too focused for that. Their standards are too high. Their time is too precious. They'd rather take the hit and learn from it than hide behind an excuse. Even when they win, they analyze. They don't say, I got lucky. They say, how can I be better? Because excuses don't just show up in failure. They can sneak in during success too. Winners stay sharp. They know comfort breeds excuses. The moment you believe you've done enough, you stop chasing more, and that's how you fall. In pressure moments, the finals, the last minutes, the toughest training days, you can't rely on motivation. You rely on your standards, and if your standards allow excuses, you'll fall. But if your standards demand excellence, if they don't tolerate softness, shortcuts, or self-pity, you become unbreakable. A winner's vocabulary is built on action, effort, honesty, accountability, and growth. Not blame, not doubt, not laziness disguised as logic. So they erase excuses. They treat them like poison because they know the only way to win is to take full ownership. Every day, every game, every rep, every moment, legacy is built on longevity and consistency. Legacy isn't built in a single match. It isn't sealed with one trophy or one season of greatness. Legacy is a long game, a brutal, relentless, demanding journey of consistency, of showing up at the highest level again and again, year after year. Anyone can have a good season. Anyone can be unstoppable for a moment, but the real icons, they sustain it, they evolve, they last. Longevity is not just about time. It's about relevance. It's about dominating in different eras under different managers, with different teammates, in different systems. It's about adjusting your game without losing your edge. It's about reinventing yourself while holding onto your fire. Because the longer you're in the game, the more it tests you. The more it asks, can you still do it? Can you still lead? Can you still win? And every time you answer yes, not with words, but with action, your legacy grows. It grows because people stop seeing you as a player and start seeing you as a standard. A reference point, a living reminder of what excellence really looks like. Consistency is the foundation of that legacy. It's not just being great when you feel great. It's being great when you're tired, when you're doubted, when your body hurts, when the media questions you, when the schedule is stacked. Consistency is doing the right thing. It's playing with intensity whether it's a final or a friendly. Whether the world is watching or no one is. You become legendary not because you were brilliant once, but because you never stopped being brilliant. Because while others dipped, you maintained. The numbers pile up, yes, but more than that, the trust builds. Teammates trust you, coaches trust you, fans trust you. Because you're not a moment, you're a force. Our legends don't walk away, they walk through. Final chapter or first minute, the fire stays the same. This is Motivate with CR7. This is Motivate with CR7. Let's finish strong, like only champions do.